This episode of the Event Industry News podcast is sponsored by Evolution Dome, award-winning temporary inflatable event structures. Take a look at their structures at evolutiondome.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dixon, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you join today's podcast from. And today's subject is something that I have a personal interest in, very much so, as well as having a professional interest in my role working as a freelancer on various events around the UK and now across in the States as well, is the subject of sound and audio and the contributing element that it has to an event. And in some respects, what my guest today calls the fundamental and often underappreciated element of events. I'm delighted to say that joining the Event Industry News podcast for the first time is the founder of the Exclamation Group, joining us from New York, Mr. Thomas Serrano. Thomas, a very warm welcome to the Event Industry News podcast.
Hello, James. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And as I said, this is a subject that I have a personal interest in, a professional interest in. I picked up an electric guitar when I was about 14 years old. And ever since then, I was fascinated in plugging stuff in making noise with things. I would plug hi-fis into the back of VHS machines to record the audio from a VHS cassette of a concert that I wanted to listen to on my Sony Walkman at the time. And it's just an area then that has continued to fascinate me. And I've been lucky enough to move professionally into, in later years as my own career evolved. I think it's important that we give some context, first of all, as to who you are, who the Exclamation Group is, the clients that you work for, and that will hopefully then lead us into the conversation we're going to have today about how audio plays such an important role in your events. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Thomas, and about the Exclamation Group.
So Exclamation Group, we are based on the East Coast between New York and Miami. We're like a boutique event agency. We thrive when it becomes a challenge to do a very creative experience for either a large corporation or luxury group. This is our experience for the last 15 years now in the US. I'm today in New York City. This is one of our two offices, and we are recognized a lot in the US for our experience within luxury group. Mm-hmm. And this is our passion. This is what we do for living now. But we are also really in tune with a lot of large US corporations to help them to do something, very special as an event and not just another good event, which makes a big difference. And yes, we have been doing that and created the Exclamation Group in January 2020.
Fabulous. Now that puts it into context. We are dealing with luxury brands, and anybody who wants to find out about some of these brands, that there's no secret. Go to exclamation-group.com. You can look on Thomas's website, and you'll see some of the names and some of the organizations that you've worked with and delivered events for. And we are talking premium, world recognized brands working at the top end of their own industries, which then leads us into the conversation today about the experience that they want to create by commissioning you to put their events together, and why audio for you plays such an important part in that. Why are you so of this opinion that it's really the fundamental element into those experiences that you're creating?
Because I think it does convey an affect. Sounds and music convey an affect, emotion more than any other senses. Brings you back sometime to your memory and some of your past experiences. But for sure, in the moment, as a collective or as an individual moment, I think it does bring a lot to what we call the emotional journey that usually we like to map for our guests and our clients, which I think is very unique. In the way we work, meaning that when we think of an event and we're about to plan an event, usually, you have the famous run-off show that everybody goes with. And in that run-off show, you have all the technical aspects and you have the audio, you have the video and so on. We have an additional column that is emotion. And in that additional column, for every single moment of the experience of our future client, coming into that event, we are going to map the emotional journey. We are going to look at what type of emotion we want to convey, we want to generate, what is the intensity of that emotion, how we are going to generate that emotion. Is it a collective one? Is it something that we want people to be proactive about in the experience? And when you look at mapping that emotional journey, at the end, when you look back, it gives you a very good overview of what you're about to achieve. And of course, sound is one of the elements in the mix that we love to work with. I think is usually somewhat forgotten. We still receive nowadays even guidelines from global HQs, from the biggest luxury group in the world, and they will spend a lot of time showing you the invitation, showing you a lot of the different visual aspect of that event. And there's nothing about music, there's nothing about sound. So that's always something that we bring back to the table, and actually our clients enjoy talking about and helping us design the sound and the music across the entire event. I think at Exclamation Group, what we believe in, it's really to be first of all meaningful in what we do. So meaningful to the brand, meaning that whatever the sound of the music has to be unique to their heritage, to their DNA, to the goal of that specific day for that specific brand, but also meaningful to the audience. Is it going to resonate with the audience? Is the audience going to enjoy it? And I will say meaningfulness is more of a rational thing. And after, the second thing we really believe in, it's not only to be meaningful, but it's to be memorable. And that's where you add that emotional, aspect of how to build something that people will remember, enjoy, and hopefully come back to. And that's where emotion are usually the best way to connect. The brand want to connect. It cannot only be a transaction. I invite you, you come, you leave, or I invite you, you buy, you leave. If it was a store event.
Yeah, very much so. And what strikes me is you said something there that they're often overlooked, maybe they're underappreciated. Maybe certain event organizers think, well, music can't play a part in my event because it's a business conference and a trade show. So all we need our audio systems to do is to work with the microphones for the panelists who are delivering the conference sessions, and a lectern mic for somebody delivering a PowerPoint. And when I think then to what you're actually trying to achieve, you're still trying to achieve and promote and provoke an emotional reaction from your audience. Even if it's a very strict corporate business event, you still want those people to feel engaged, to feel like they are having their senses heightened by what's about to happen. And you can often achieve that with music, regardless of what the type of event is. And the same way that we have a very specific playlist that might play before a band comes on stage with their opening music, it's all designed to get you to the point where you're ready to then engage in what's about to take place on stage. And I think that's, from a personal point of view, something that we miss in the wider events industry, that regardless of what the event is, you're still trying to achieve the same thing, even if it's one speaker walking on stage to deliver a keynote presentation.
Yes, and I think there's different category when we say sound, which is a very generic word. You can think of either live or pre-recorded. Those are the two big categories. Live mean, of course, a DJ, a live band, or a single artist with, for example, a cappella performance. So those are all the live aspect that you can bring, or just musicians coming to your event. And all the pre-recorded that we usually consider as sound design is very important, where we can either take some existing music, and it's just, as you mentioned it earlier, background music, which people will not really pay attention to, or sound music who really has the say in the emotional journey. And in that case, we spend a lot of time designing those moments to the second. When people enter a room or is watching a video, what is the sound going along with it, and how does that sound going to affect the overall experience? And we enjoy very much that part of the work, that creative work, where we design specifically the sound that's going to be, embedded into the overall experience.
And of course, so much when you don't just think, oh, well, here's a pre-recorded playlist, or we're going to have a band. When you actually put the thought into it and you go into those sort of detailed timings, you can really work a particular piece of music, whether it's classical, rock, folk music, jazz, to a point in the music where it reaches a dynamic peak that coincides with a dynamic peak in your event as well, with the lighting, with what's happening on a stage, with what's happening with a presentation. There are all these elements that can come together really at a single moment.
Yeah, we did, for example, sound design for the reveal of a new car for a large manufacturer. And the reveal of that car was 3 minutes. And I designed the music with a professional studio, but I was a creative director. And we did, look at every second, every aspect of that car that, was coming out as a surprise from the back of the stage, driving to the main stage and rotating, for people to see every angle of the car, every single of that, piece of reveal was designed through music first, and after that we had lighting and video coming, but the music was the driving factor for that reveal, and everything else was coming afterwards.
And from a production point of view, do you then, when you said the car was rotating, you can adjust presumably the speed of the rotation so that certain elements are revealed to coincide with the music that you've programmed?
So we asked the manufacturer in Germany what was the speed of the rotation, how can we, and we decided pre-event what was going to be the speed. So we knew to the second, they are German engineers, very precise.
Yeah, yes.
How the car was going to rotate. We knew the exact position from the beginning to the end, and that's how we designed it. And there was no surprise when we came and we rehearsed the day before. It was exactly what we planned.
What we've spoken about there is I would guess at one end of the spectrum in terms of the detail and the level of articulate planning that went into that particular event and that particular 3-minute segment. If we take it to maybe the opposite end of the spectrum, and event organizers who are running, I'm going to use a horrible word here, but mundane events, things that they think are not particularly exciting, how can they be incorporating some of the elements that you're using at that end of the spectrum into what they're doing on a day-to-day level? Because I always have an iPod with me, an old iPhone that has Spotify on there. I carry it. I deliver AV as a one-man operation, as a freelancer, to small conferences. So I and the one thing that I always have on is music. Even when people are making their way into the room, I don't like a completely silent conference room because there's an awkwardness. People don't like silence, especially if they're around people that maybe they're not familiar with, or they've only met for the first time. So I always play music as people are walking into a room, just have on in the background. I always try and find a track that is suitable for the particular dynamic of when a session finishes. So when a session finishes, again, rather than having an awkward silence, make sure there's some music queued up and ready to go. And I see a lot of events take place where it's just not even considered to have any music on there. What is there advice that you've sort of learned from your own experiences that you would pass on to people who are working at maybe that end of the industry?
I mean, I would agree with you on the overall, need to always include music into your event as much as possible for the overall, emotional engagement and dynamics. I think sometimes is interesting also to ask people their liking prior to the event, to engage with them and to ask them what is their most recent favorite song, for example, or what is the style of music that they usually like. That gives you some data that you can after include into your playlist that just make it more relevant. And it's so simple to do. People just don't dare asking people their taste. Music is so subjective that could just be relevant to play, a couple of songs that have been mentioned the most by your audience, and you're going to please them, and they're just going to, connect easier, and they will have that little smile when they hear the song, because they will be just happy that you took their liking into consideration. And you need to you need to mix and match. Of course, you cannot play the favorite song of everybody. I think once in a while, not for a lot of money, it's interesting to have some type of live music. And it could be one musician, it could be a saxophonist, it could be a violinist, depending on your taste and on the objective of the event, but just to have that aspect. So usually when we try to decide between live and pre-record, of course there is a budget, but it's not only about the budget, because there's a lot of musicians that are willing to play and come, and it doesn't mean that it is a lot of money. I think you decide for live music over pre-recorded when you can make sure that people, it will be asked for people to have a minimum level of attention to the musician. If it's just a cocktail and it's very loud and it's a big audience, you don't want to have just one lost musician somewhere in the corner that nobody will pay attention to. That will not work well. But if you have a specific location where you can have the musician on stage, and you think at a specific moment, doesn't have to be long, people will, pay attention. I think it's worth, for example, trying, and we like to do that. But again, every brand has different also interpretation of what music is. It's very subjective. I will give you the example of two different clients that we have in the luxury industry. We do a lot of what we call hard luxury, which is high jewelry and high, watchmaking, luxury watches and luxury jewelry. If you look at Audemars Piguet, which is from Switzerland, from Le Brassus, they are all about breaking the rules. It is a very old brand, all about craftsmanship, beautiful watches, but they like to break the rules, and they will not play the music you would expect from them. They will maybe go into pop or rock, or they will go even to rap. They love to, had collaboration with Jay-Z and those type of artists, the pop culture, which is a little bit disruptive, and that's what they go for. And our other client, for example, in jewelry, Van Cleef and Arpels, which is very traditional, beautiful craftsmanship of high jewelry from France. They are sticking more to their heritage, which is classical music, classical ballet, and that's what they like to play, and that's what we like to do on their behalf. So depending on your brand, depending on your client, make sure to understand what is their interpretation of their own heritage, to make sure that you land in something that is relevant for the brand, but that the audience will also enjoy.
I should mention very, very, very briefly, if I may, Thomas, that that there's if you go onto the Exclamation Group website, there is a great page that details some of the events that they've worked on, and there's actually a specific example of Van Cleef and Arpels, an event that you did in LA, their 45th anniversary celebration. So if anybody wants to maybe go into that one a little bit more detail, then there's a specific reference on Thomas's website. One thing that I would like to ask is, when you are designing these events, we've spoken about the programming of music and tailoring it and finding the right type of music to work with events. But in terms of the technical delivery as well, do you think that unless you have the technical capability of delivering clearly the music that you've decided to program, or the sounds that you've decided to program, is it just as important to look at the technical aspect of it and how you are going to deliver that experience to people through the sound systems?
Yeah. This is usually, handled by our trusted vendors that we hire most of the time locally. And it is, their job and their responsibility. I'm not a technician. I don't have any background in those type of equipment, but it is to make sure that, depending on the location and depending on, the overall delivery of music that you want to achieve, that of course you have the right equipment to deliver that. And I think it's much more challenging when it's live music, of course, with different musicians. You have singer, and you need to do balance, and you need to rehearse, and that takes a lot of time and preparation. pre-recorded. It's much easier now. There's a lot of technology that are available and affordable to deliver music into a room, which is easier with not those very heavy and expensive equipment that I used to hire and rent 20 years ago when I started. So technology does help a lot now, for that matter, for sure.
And we're seeing certainly in the event tech market more opportunities for people to maybe experience music as a factor within the delivery of an event. And I say that with reference to event apps, and there are some great new technologies being developed where people can actually tune into the audio feed from a stage at an event, just using their phone. The latency in some of the networking now is so low in terms of a time delay that you can actually pick up an audio feed, like you can as if you were plugged into the system through an app on your phone, which is fascinating. And we're seeing more and more events, certainly in the UK, where at things like trade shows and corporate events, we're reducing the volume on the show floor by using wireless headsets. So people are given a wireless headset when they sit down in the conference theatre, which opens up a world of possibilities for delivering audio and delivering that experience, because it's so clear, it's so immersive. You have a full stereo experience, which you don't often get through a live PA system. That I feel that, with the technology that we're actually now starting to deploy, certainly in the conference and the trade show market, there are opportunities there to maybe put a little bit more thought into some of the audio delivery that we can bring directly into people's ears.
I did with the headset, and it's a good idea that we should, suggest. We did two different experience. One that people may know about that we call in our industry silent disco.
Yes.
So basically, people are on the dance floor. Everybody has his own headset, play their own music, and everybody's dancing to the different music and rhythm that they have, and it's pretty funny to watch, but super fun to participate.
I've been in them. They're great.
And the second one that we did, it was a gentleman that wanted to, CEO of a company was delivering a speech in a very big room, with a lot of experiential around, and there was a lot of noise outside in a terrace in Manhattan. And we decided to give to everybody for about the 15 minutes, 20-minute speech, some headset. And the level of attention was amazing, because people were really listening to the CEO, that if he was, just next to you, speaking into your ear. And that finding was really amazing to us, because I was so proud that instead of having the CEO with a microphone and trying to get the attention of everybody, we gave the headphones. Everybody was wondering why. We asked them to put them on. We dimmed the light a little bit, and it was fun because those headphones had some blue light around, and all of a sudden, all our guests were paying a lot more attention to the delivery and the speech of the CEO of the company. So that was, through technology, as you were mentioning, and headsets, a way to enhance, that specific moment.
And this is where I feel that there are opportunities. Is that I've used for the Event Tech Live event that I'm part of in the UK and now in Las Vegas. We've used the headsets for several years now, so that we can reduce the amount of noise that's on the show floor, because we have exhibitors in their exhibition booths. They're there to do business. They don't want a loud PA system, shooting across the show floor. So we use the headsets as a way of designing the sound so that we can reduce the volume of the PA. But as you alluded to, then what the major benefit of that was not just the reduction in volume from the PA system, it was the attention of the people. There's something about the act of putting that headset on that immediately puts you into the world of what you're listening to. It tunes people in, literally, and it's and once you've got their attention, then there are so many more things that we could potentially use those headsets for.
Yeah. It's a win-win. It's a win-win situation for sure, and we enjoy it very much. One big piece of advice I will give to agencies or clients when they're working through music is such about personal taste and such, subjective, selection of sound of music, is try to make it as rational as possible through the process. So try to put in writing what are your objective, what type of music you want to go with. And we like, after receiving the brief, we go through a questionnaire that we send to our client to make sure that we have in writing exactly what they like. We question them about, every single moment, every type of music that they want, and why would they like those type of music at those specific moment. And after that, we like to go through some sampling of listening. So we'll have the clients either in person or through, for example, a Zoom call, and we'll have them listen to some music just to make sure that we are on the same page, not only in writing, but also through some sampling. And after that, that's only then we really start to design and select the music. And I would say that the rationale goes the same way when you want to select a live artist, like a singer or band. Just try to put in writing why you want live music and what type of artist you're about to hire and what's the meaning behind it, and why would you hire such an artist? What does that mean to you, and what does that mean to the audience? That's very important, because sometimes it just comes like, oh, let's have, after the gala dinner, someone on stage, and we go through budget constraints, through availability. Those are all technical aspects. And we don't really start by, do we want someone from, I don't know, from, the country you are in? Do we want some type of music that will bring nostalgia because that specific moment is about the celebration of a 50 years anniversary? I'm just inventing here,
Yeah, no,
It will
absolutely.
be really about the future, because we are dealing, I organized for the Wall Street Journal something that was called the Festival of the Future of Everything. So obviously you want to be forward, you want to be with new young artists, you want to speak about something that is really bringing you into the future. But I did a beautiful gala dinner for L'Oreal, and we wanted to put women first, and we wanted to celebrate, the history and the heritage of that brand and of the country, of the USA. It was based in New York, and we chose Aretha Franklin, and that made a lot of sense.
Wow.
Because she was, she was that queen of soul, and she was bringing all those memory back to all those guests. And when she came on stage as a surprise, you could see ladies just, crying, because they were connecting with her. They could remember when they were young and how much, happiness and how special of a moment it was. So just make sure when you select, and it could be a local group, it could be very simple, it doesn't have to be, millions of dollars, but why you do it and what's the rationale behind it, because it will make much more sense after to, to feel comfortable with your choice.
No, absolutely. And I think there is sometimes as well from events, like you said, if they choose to go down the live music route, let's say it's an awards event, and you have everyone arrives, you have your cocktails, black tie, you have your nice meal, you have your awards, and say, oh, we'll have a band, but somebody book a band. And I have it sometimes. I spend some of my life still as a semi-professional musician, and so I turn up at all sorts of parties, and events with a guitar and a microphone, and I'm amazed sometimes when you turn up to play and they've just booked the band through an agency or through something, and there's been no sort of real process as to what the client actually wants from their music. It's just book a band, we want people to get up and dance, and I know that that's easy to just sort of throw that away, and it gets to a point in the night where people think, well, the guests are all going to be drunk by that point anyway, so just book somebody that's good, it'll be okay. But it still contributes to an experience. And I went to a wedding recently, it was a cousin, and they had the most fabulous band who gave them a list of 3,000 songs that they had to choose the set list for. The band said to them, there's our list of songs, that's our repertoire, you tell us what we want, what we need to play for your audience. And the band was spectacular. There were people on the dance floor that I would not have expected to be on the dance floor all night, because everything was done with the right level of planning and execution. And it was sort of the complete antithesis to other events that I've seen where there's been no thought go into it at all. So I'm pleased that today's discussion is hopefully raising this subject of music and audio with our podcast listeners and people who follow this. And if you're an event organizer and you organize what you consider to be something fairly run of the mill, you know, and as I said, I'm involved in a number of conferences where I do the AV for them, and they expect me to turn up with some lecterns, some microphones, some projectors, set it up, plug people's laptops in and make everything work. But with just a small extra bit of thought, you can actually raise the level and the quality of that event, sometimes subconsciously, Thomas, as well. Sometimes your audience don't even realize, do they, what they're being exposed to? It's a subconscious feeling that they're getting.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's really true.
I'm really pleased that we've been able to have this conversation today with Thomas Serrano from the Exclamation Group. What's more important, Thomas, is that before we wrap up today's episode, is that people who may want to find out a little bit more about some of the projects that you guys work on and what you do, tell us how people can go and find you once this podcast is finished.
So we have a website, exclamation-group.com. They can go to our website. We can also contact us through LinkedIn, Exclamation Group LinkedIn page, or through my personal Thomas Serrano LinkedIn page, and we'll be more than happy to keep the discussion going.
Fantastic. Get thinking, everybody. Let's bring more music to our events that we're delivering out there on a day-to-day basis. And love to hear some of your suggestions. What are your favorite tracks? Tweet us at Event News Blog is us on Twitter. Find us on all of the social media platforms. If you listen to the podcast regularly and you want to give a shout out to your top 3 pieces of music, then get it on the social channels, and we'd love to hear from you. My thanks to my guest again today, Thomas Serrano, the founder of Exclamation Group. And a quick mention for a couple of things before we wrap up today's podcast. If you are listening to this via an audio platform, please don't forget to head over to eventindustrynews.com, where you can check out video versions of all of our podcasts, as well as all the latest news features, special supplements that are on the Event Industry News website, and of course the A to Z supplier directory. If you work in the events industry and you're looking for a product or a service, then chances are you will find it under the A to Z supplier directory on eventindustrynews.com. If you are already there and watching this on the website, hello to you. Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget that you can go to wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe to the podcast and listen to audio versions of those while you're out and about, and hopefully enjoying some nice summer weather if you're Northern Hemisphere, and some good winter weather if you're Southern Hemisphere, tuning into the podcast today. It brings us neatly and nicely to the end of today's episode. My thanks again to my guest today, Thomas Serrano, joining us from New York. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you on the next edition of the Event Industry News podcast. Goodbye, everybody.